on the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Happy to have with us tonight our mayor. Nashville Mayor David Briley is here and he's going to take your questions. He's also going to talk a lot about domestic violence and domestic violence awareness. We have with us also Diane Lance with the Office of Family Safety. I want to thank you both for being here. And before we start talking about domestic violence, certainly very important, I want to talk to you, Mayor, just about the budget.
Sure. So
our current budget situation, how would you characterize where we are?
Well, you don't actually have to take my word for it. Just in the last week, we got bond ratings after we went to the bond market in New York, and they gave us ratings, stable rating on all our bonds. And they look at how much debt we have. They look at our expenditures. They look at how we're managing the budget, and we got total stable ratings, except in a couple of areas where we got upgraded in terms of the rating for the debt we're going to sell in the coming days. So the budget is in fine shape this year. Unfortunately, we did have a shortfall of revenue in the last budget we adopted back in June, and so it prevented us from being able to provide all of the resources we wanted to public schools and to our employees. So that was very unfortunate, and it's not what we wanted to do. And we're working hard this year to make sure we have all the resources necessary in the coming year to accomplish everything we need. But anybody who looks at Nashville sees the incredible growth we're having here and sees all of the new buildings going up. So you should anticipate that we're in good shape financially, and we are. It doesn't mean we got to do everything we wanted to last year, but we're working hard so that this year we'll be in a good spot to do it. And the bond rating agencies see it that way.
At one point, there was talk about selling off land.
Right.
And that was not popular. The council didn't want to sell off that land. Did that leave a hole in the budget? And what do we do about the fact that we're not going to sell that land, but yet I believe it was in the budget? What does that mean for us?
Well, there are two pieces of property that there's legislation in front of the council this coming meeting to actually sell. One is over on Charlotte, and the council had, even the budget before, had agreed to sell that. It's some old an area where we had salt bins for when it actually snows here in Nashville. So that's in line to be sold after we've rezoned it in compliance with what the neighborhood wanted over there. And then there's an old fire hall location over in Green Hills. We built a different fire hall, and there's about I don't know, it's probably half an acre or so, and that's also likely to be sold in the coming weeks. So it's not going to leave a hole in the budget. We think we're going to be in a position to go ahead and dispose of some property that we're not currently using. The idea being that if it's sitting there and we're not using it, it's not bringing in any tax dollars for the community. And we know that if we get it sold and get the tax revenues coming in, it'll give us more money for pay raises for police and fire, which we know we need to do, and more money for public education, which is an important priority to us. So I think everybody expects us to use their resources wisely, and if we've got property that's not being used, one way to use it wisely is to get it into the hands of people who are going to build on it and allow us to collect more taxes there.
You got through last year without a property tax increase.
Right.
It was tough. There were people who said maybe we need a property tax increase.
There were.
We come up this next year. Do you think we can get through next year without a property tax increase, or is it too early to say?
Well, I have no intention of proposing a property tax increase this coming year. I think that if we manage well, which we're working hard to do, we'll be able to live within our means, and we're working really hard to make sure we have the resources necessary for a cost of living adjustment for our employees. We're working really hard to make sure that we make ends meet within the existing revenue that we have, and I anticipate we'll be able to do that.
And you make yourself available here, which we appreciate. You go to a lot of town meetings, and I know you're asked a question that a lot of people have asked even me. They say the city's booming, so why did we have these financial problems, and how is it that we did struggle to pay, you know, our metro employees and fully fund schools when we're booming in the way we are?
And that's a very legitimate question for people to ask. What happened in the last budget cycle is we had a list of things that took place. When we do a reappraisal, we have to reset the tax rate. And we have to make a whole list of assumptions about that, about how many appeals there will be, about what the state does with utilities and setting their values. And we have to count on state revenue to come in like it did before. So we made some mistakes, I'll be frank about that, in the finance department in terms of setting the rate. And additional state revenues fell off by about $15 million. And so when you add all of that up, it just meant that unlike the years before, in the 2 years before we had $100 million in new revenue and $120 million in new revenue. This last year we really had very little revenue growth. And it was not because we weren't growing, it's because of some mistakes that were made in terms of setting the tax rate primarily. This year we know we'll have growth. It's just a question of exactly how much will it be, and it's a question of how tight we're being on expenditure. So we're working hard every day with every department and the school district to make sure that they comply with the budget we gave and make sure that they're spending what we authorized, and working hard to find ways to increase our revenues without raising the tax rate. And I'm optimistic that this year we'll be back in line with that revenue growth that'll let us go out and find a cost of living adjustment for our employees, get more money into the hand of Metro Nashville Public Schools so that they can do what's important, and that's educating our kids here in town.
You feel like that can be done next year without a property tax increase?
Well, we had $120 million in revenue growth in the 2 years prior without any tax increase. We'll have some increase this year. We're working hard to make sure it's maximized and making sure that we're not spending money where it doesn't need to be spent. And we're optimistic. I can't make a promise yet because we're only 3 months into the cycle, but we're working hard. We're managing our budget like every family has to do. When times are tight, you go and you look at things closely and trying to find those areas where you can spend a little bit less. And we're trying to find ways to increase our revenue. So one of the things we're looking at is our parking management. We think we can do a better job in terms of managing our parking spaces and generate a little bit more revenue for the city. So we're optimistic and working hard, and that's what I think people want me to do.
And my last question, then we'll move on. All right. You said there was a mistake made. What do you mean by that? There was a mistake made in setting the rate?
That's
Is that
right.
what you said? What does that mean?
So before the reappraisal, the property tax rate was, let's say, $4.50 something cents. I think that's what it was. When we reappraise, we have to reduce the rate. So the rate came down to $3.15 in the Urban Services District. The way we make that calculation about what it has to come down to so that there's no new net revenue, we have to make assumptions about how many appeals there will be. We have to make assumptions about what the state's going to do when it sets the valuation of utilities in the district. And so we were a little bit optimistic about how high the state was going to go when it set the valuation of utilities, and we were a little bit optimistic when it came to setting the number of appeals that would be successful. So when we made those assumptions, that we were a little bit off, and it resulted in, I don't know, $20 to $40 million in less revenue in property taxes than we got the year before. So we actually lowered the rates too low is basically what happened there. And so when you add that and then add the $15 million in reduction in state revenue that we had, we lost the hall tax went down, no offense intended, and
no relation.
Yeah, and we lost a little bit of schools revenue because we had a decline in enrollment. Add all of that up, and it made for a tight year. And so we had limited options in terms of what to do, and about 71% of all Metro employees have either already gotten a raise or will get a raise this year, but we didn't guarantee 100%, and I feel bad about that. I wish we could have, but I think people expected me to live within our means, not raise taxes, and move the city forward, and I think we've done a good job of that this year.
And I think it's interesting in what you're saying that you're optimistic that you can do some of those things next year.
We are.
And without a property tax increase.
That's correct.
And that's based on the growth.
That's correct.
Well, Mayor, thank you. All right, that's great. So what else is on your mind? What are some of the big issues you've dealt with in the past week? I guess, what else is on your mind?
Well, obviously, I'm concerned, like everybody is in Nashville, about public safety, and so focusing on that with our police department and trying to work on juvenile crime, trying to work on the gun violence issues that we currently have in town. Those are important things, and this is a month where we're especially focused on domestic violence here in Nashville. Almost half of the crimes that involve violence against a person in Nashville are crimes of domestic violence. So Nashville is fortunate that under Mayor Dean, we started to move to focus on that even more. And in Nashville, we have now a department that is focused on family safety. I think we're unique in the country in that respect. So we're working hard to try and focus on that issue, because we know that if we can diminish domestic violence in Nashville, we'll be doing a lot to diminish violence overall, and that's an important thing for us here in Nashville.
And so Diane Lance is here with the Office of Family Safety, and I want to ask you, Diane, if you were to define the Office of Family Safety, what is that? What does it do, and what is it?
Well, the Office of Family Safety is a metro department. Just like water is a department or parks is a department, so is the Office of Family Safety. And our function is to improve domestic violence and sexual assault victim safety and offender accountability, and also to hold the collaborative together of entities, whether that be nonprofits or other metro departments that work with those victims, to keep the collaboration working together so it's not so challenging for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault to get the services they need in our community.
And how unique is it that we have this?
It's very unique. I believe we're one of the only cities, or the only city in the country, to have an exclusive metro department that focuses on these areas. Obviously, police have parts of their departments that focus on domestic violence and sexual assault, district attorneys' offices, but for a city to decide to create a standalone department with exclusive responsibility to work in this area is highly unique.
And what are some of the numbers? I mean, so how serious a problem is it here in Davidson County?
Well, in Davidson County, there are approximately 27,000 police calls to respond to domestic violence cases. That's a lot. As the mayor just said, 50%, nearly 50% of all crimes, all violent crimes against another person are domestic violence. We are no different than the national numbers. One in 4 women and 1 in 7 men are victims, have been victims during their lifetime of severe intimate partner violence. That's a really high number.
And so then what is the difference made that we have this department? So let's say you're somebody that has experienced that trauma. How does that department make a difference in that person's life?
That's such a great question. I'm really glad you asked, because we connect with victims at different levels. So one of the first and most important things we do is responding to a victim in crisis, a domestic violence or a sexual assault victim in crisis, whether they're coming to get an order of protection, they're responding to their court case. We have a center called the Gene Crow Advocacy Center in the courthouse that helps victims wherever they are in the process. So with safety planning, whether that safety planning is how to stay safe if you are not able to leave the situation at that time, or how to leave a domestic violence situation safely. Those are some of the things that we do. We assist with orders of protection. We also assist with identifying risk and providing domestic violence education. One of the big steps is realizing you're a victim of domestic violence. What is actually happening? There's a lot of manipulation, shaming, intimidation, that it can be hard to put all those pieces to the puzzle together and really realize the full picture of how you're being controlled by this person.
All right, we're going to take a break. This kind of sets the table for the discussion. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Anything you want to talk about, give us a call. Take a break. Be back right after this.